So take a few minutes and describe exactly what you saw. How was the body, and give us some details.
The body was laid out, flat, arms to the side, on its back. It was on like an ambulance stretcher or a gurney, so to speak. They did a makeshift end to it to extend the length of it. We were able to walk right up to it. It was large. It was big. I'm guessing, I'm saying close to 8 feet just based on the length of the gurneys. Huge wide chest. It was a brownish red in color. The eyes were closed. The mouth was closed. Incredible detail on the face. I was able to see the pores of the skin, the fingernails, the feet. And we can get into other descriptions of it, but that's basically what I seen was a Sasquatch. It was large, weight-wise, I'm guessing 500 plus. I was able to do a slight measurement on the shoulder to shoulder or collarbone to collarbone based on my size. Like from the center of my nose to the end of my tip was from the center of his head to his shoulder. So I'm guessing we were looking at least 38 inches shoulder width. It was quite big. It was quite large. And it was impressive.
You mentioned the face
and
saw the detail. Do you think that is the same Bigfoot as shown in the now infamous camper video?
You know, looking at it again after seeing this, I say it's a very good chance. The physical look at it, and again, the camper video shot through a mesh tent, so it's hard. But yeah, I would say that there's no question. I mean, I'm more apt to believe it now than I did before. You know. But yeah, I would probably say it's the same creature, no question.
Describe the hands and feet, because that's we always look for footprints in the forest, and some people get knuckle prints. But describe the hands and feet that you saw.
Yeah, which is interesting too, because and even with the arms, the length of the arms was proportionate to the body. I did take crib notes when I left there because I wanted to freshen my hand. The hands were large, but it was large to proportion of an 8-foot body. So I don't want to say they were out of human or out of range to the size of the body, because it wasn't, but they were way bigger than my hands. Of course, it was an 8-foot creature. The top of the hands were hair covered. There was hair growing between the fingers. It had black fingernails.
Facebook, Find Bigfoot.
Okay, we're now recording again, so let's make this more of just a three-way dialogue then.
Okay.
You want to just do another intro, Jack?
All right. This is part number 2. I'm here with Jeff Anderson, Facebook Find Bigfoot founder, and Muskie Allen, who has been our most prolific poster over the last 3 years, and he is also a very knowledgeable Bigfoot researcher turned skeptic, and but very analytical. And he was chosen to go view the body of a Sasquatch somewhere within a certain distance of Las Vegas, Nevada. So, Jeff, you want to just keep going here, and should we start from the beginning? How do you want to do the second, longer segment?
Yeah, we were just doing some details of the body, and I just wanted to ask one more question about that, and we can keep going there too. But Muskie, describe the color of the skin tone.
The hair was a brownish red, and the skin tone, again, on the backs of the soles of the feet, I noticed were extremely dark brown, if not black. But being hair covered, it was difficult to say. The face was more of a, believe it or not, like a tannish color. But I don't know. Now remember, it's not living anymore, and I know people change colors. And that was one of the questions I thought: is this really the color? Now I know the hair wouldn't change color, but I was confused about the skin color. It was a grayish darkish gray color, and the skin, the hair across it, kind of was shadowing it. So I'm sure I wasn't getting the full color of it, but it was definitely a dark gray skin color. Now I don't know if that's because it's post-mortem. I don't know. That's something that's going to have to be determined.
Rick Dyer had mentioned to us in a previous phone call, in kind of preparation, he said, well, in his opinion, one thing was obvious when you looked at this Bigfoot, it had lived a hard life. He could tell by the condition of the body. Would you agree with that? Do you see any signs of hardship that living out in the wild had been hard on the Bigfoot?
When Rick, I'm sure Rick has seen this thing more than I have, and he probably seen it very recent after the killing of it. But I seen this thing being very well groomed, and it could have been from the people who have been looking into this creature. I mean, the hair could have been brushed, it could have been pulled. So as far as a rough life, I really didn't see it. But again, the belly was shaved on the one side, the top of the neck was shaved, and across the heart region had an area that was shaved. So, so somebody's obviously been through prior to what Rick has looked at. So I don't know how, and it's very possible, it's very possible, but with the hands face down, and I didn't want to pick up and turn. I did touch the creature, but I didn't want to lift his limbs up because it obviously had been through some medical examinations, and I didn't want to encroach and upset anybody that was there. Again, I didn't know the other people that were there. Rick did know one of them, who was talking to him quite extensively, but so I don't know as far as what his description was. Mine seemed like it was pretty groomed.
We should clarify, this was a male or female?
This is definitely a male.
Okay. So maybe take us back in time. Do you want to talk more about just how you got there, and then maybe your overall impressions of... Sure.
Emotion would be good, too.
Yeah, your emotions, kind of what you're going through.
My only conversation with Rick Dyer prior to this was through the communication through the internet, and calling his show when he was talking about his Bigfoot. So I didn't know him personally. He seemed like a very nice guy, very straightforward. He said he'd pick me from the airport, call him when he got there. I did. He was only 5 minutes away. In fact, he was already there waiting for me. He had to do a circle around because you couldn't park at the airport. Picked me up. He took me to the hotel. I had checked in. I came back out, and he says, he was waiting for somebody to meet us there. And the gentleman he was waiting for didn't show up. And he was quite upset, and he was burning his phone. And he's looking at the time, and he says, listen, I only got a short amount of time for this. Now, mind you, I didn't get there till 8 o'clock, so I'm thinking, well, we got a little bit of a drive to do. Rick did not wait. On the way there, he did get a phone call, and whoever this was said, I'd meet you there. Now, I'm just kind of listening. We're sitting in the car together, so I don't know. But when we got there, we were actually turned away when we got out. The other guy, there were some logistic problems with the guy that he met there that was supposed to meet in Vegas prior, and we were turned away. So this is when I said, something, this is a charade. You're not going to play me any longer, He says, well, just give it a little time, and we went into the town, which was only about 2 miles away, and we were sitting just talking at a little coffee shop, and it was already midnight. And he got a phone call saying, we got to go now. So I said, oh, here we go again. And at that point, I'm still thinking, this is just a joke. And when we did arrive to the facility, we were met in the parking lot by somebody and said, okay, I'll get you guys in. And at that time, there was 2 other people there who Rick knew another one of the guys. Again, I wasn't trying to get in their business. I wasn't trying to listen. They were talking. Rick was a little upset that the one guy didn't meet him in Vegas earlier because we were going to ride out together. He didn't show up, but needless to say, we had to have some paperwork that the guy in the parking lot who runs the facility needed it there. I said, wait a minute, and Rick says, don't worry. And he pulled some stuff out, and they let us in. And we had about 20 minutes. I don't know how much I can describe the facility at this point. Where it was at, obviously, I can't say nothing. But we were led to two areas, two chambered rooms. We were led down a hallway to the end, to the right. He opened the door, brought us in. He says, give me 5 minutes. We waited there, and he says, come in. And he opened it up, and it was there. Lights were on, and I was blown away. I was blown away.
What was your emotion when you first saw it? I mean, just describe what that was like.
I walked up very slow to it because, I'll be honest with you, I was waiting for somebody to sit up in a monkey suit because I was seeing the top of the head and this dark figure. I'm like, okay, here's where somebody stands up, you know. And I walked up cautiously, and I was quite impressed. I said, wow, this is it. This is the real thing. And there was another person there talking, and I did ask a question initially because I noticed that some of the parts of the skin and hair had like a talcum powder spread on it, and I did ask what that was. It seemed odd to me, and it was a parasitic powder that they put on it for the skin and the hide and the hair. I don't know what for. He never got into it. He said, it's just a parasitic powder. It won't hurt you, is what he said. And it was a whitish, yellowish powder, almost like a talcum powder, that was pretty much over the whole body, but not thick. I mean, it was very light, but you could see someone had just took like baby powder and spread on it. I don't know the logistics why, but that was one of the first questions I asked. Matter of fact, that was the only question I asked on it, because I was pretty blown away. I was blown away what I've seen.
Can we start asking detailed questions about the body that are probably you hadn't thought about, or that I'm just going to ask them in no particular order. Did you notice was there any bend to the legs? I mean, like they weren't all the way straight.
It was. The legs were straight, the feet were standing up in the air. Well, the left one was straight in the air, the one was kind of turned to the right a little bit. There was a white cloth from like the mid-belly down to his thigh. He removed that, and that's how I knew it was a male. When he pulled that off, why it was there I don't know, but he removed it quite abruptly. That's when he said, you guys have about 20 minutes. But no, it was pretty much hands to the side, the palms down, the feet were in the air, it was on its back, the eyes were closed, the mouth was closed, pretty much a full view. But no, nothing was...
Would you say the chest, if you were to describe the chest, was it flat like a human, with the flat chest in the front, or, some people will have like a barrel-shaped chest?
I would have to go with definitely a barrel shape. Yeah, that no question. It was quite predominant through the chest area. And again, part of it was shaved to the lower area and to the right of the belly or the abdomen area. I don't know why it was shaved, but it was definitely a barrel chest. It was
okay. The spine of a human, you can have five or so lumbar vertebrae, starting from the rib cage down to the pelvis. Now, the other great apes have all supposedly started with, a long spine, and then separately, the orangs, chimps, and gorillas have all devolved into kind of either like a knuckle walking or a quadrupedal from kind of what the original given. Now, thinking back and just looking at the chest and looking at the hips, would you say this also has a number of lumbar vertebrae that would be similar to a human? Did it look shorter? Did it look longer through there?
You're talking like the torso area?
No, I'm talking the lumbar, the low back.
Yeah.
That allows the twisting of the hips. Your shoulders can twist. If you can do golf or swimming, it's a very important point. If it has 5 or 6 lumbar vertebrae, kind of like a human, is it 5?
Something. I'll be honest with you, something I just couldn't answer. Something I just couldn't answer. It was, it was laying on its back. I couldn't tell anything what you're looking for. I don't know.
No, it's not a problem.
It seemed very human to me. Definitely bipedal.
Definitely bipedal. Okay. When you looked at the hand, did you see any evidence that it was that it ran on its knuckles or maybe its palms or?
Okay, the hands. I know what you're thinking. Wear marks or the hands. The palms were face down. I didn't pick up the hands. I did look at the top of the hands with the hair cover, and I noticed the hair was growing between the digits, the fingers. I couldn't tell. It had a lot of hair on its top of its hands, right down to the knuckle, maybe even to the first knuckle of the finger. There was quite a bit of hair on there.
Did you see any pigmentation differently? Like an orangutan has a pigmentation line about the middle of the back of the hand. Did you see any pigmentation line in this?
There was really too much hair. The only thing I could tell about your pigmentation, you're talking color?
Yeah, so it might change from a kind of a tannish reddish skin to more of a blackish skin.
Right, I know what you're
kind of halfway.
Honestly, I just couldn't really get that much description out of it. The one thing I can say is that the nose underneath the eye regions was basically bare skin, and I did notice pores of the skin, quite predominant too. I mean, you didn't have to really look. I could see it. A lot of pores on the nose and underneath the eyes and across the top of the cheekbone. And that's where the hair started getting really thick, but completely bare skin in those areas.
Now humans have 3 or 4 different genes that create the structure above and below the nose to kind of have a human-shaped nose. Mm-hmm. Can you describe the nose, and did you see, just without...
The nose, the nose started exactly where our bridge of the nose starts, between the eyes. Mm-hmm. It came down, didn't come down any further. There was probably about 1.5 inches separation from the bottom of the nose to the top of the lips. The lips were heavy. They were very thick, very wide mouth, extremely wide mouth, actually. The mouth was closed. A very wide nose with large nasal passages. As far as the shape, I mean, just a general flat across the top and a wide spread on the base of it. Other than that, it looked pretty human.
Okay, very good. Jeff Anderson did a very long interview, or a good interview, with a man you happened to see a Sasquatch face and be able to study it through binoculars, peeking around a tree for about 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And he basically felt that the nose and the cheekbones were like when it turned its head to the side, the cheekbones were so pronounced they could almost hide the nose. You know, do you know what I mean?
I will say that, because I said with the cheekbones below the eye, that's about where the hairline started getting real thick. I did notice that those are pretty forward out. I won't say they'll meet to the bridge of the nose or to the point of the nose, but they were pretty predominant right where the hairline started at that cheekbone, at the top cheekbone beneath the eye. It was very, how should you say, very strong. Very, looked like it could take a punch. Okay, it just had a very strong, predominant look to it.
Okay, the number 3 video now is, but as we rank them, is the Woodpile thermal, and one of the reasons is that you can measure the width of the eyes, and it's substantially larger eye width than a normal human. Normal humans, between the center of the eye, about 2.5 inches. Describe the eyes and the eye width. Okay,
the eyes were closed. I'll just say that the basic size of the head was enormous. Mind you, from shoulder tip to shoulder tip was so impressive, it actually blew me away. So when I'm going off that scale to measure the size of the head was large. It was very wide and very square. Again, the square jawbone was even with the hair on it, you could see the full square. But as far as the eyes spread apart, I guess it would be far apart, considering the whole width and size of the head was enormous. But again, it was an 8-foot creature.
Yeah, would you say people have said that the head of a Sasquatch might be as wide as 12 inches. If you're talking 36 to 40 inch wide shoulders,
sure.
That proportionately it's maybe 12 inches, which is quite a bit larger than a regular human. So
sure.
You're saying compared to a human, it's a lot large. It's much larger.
Sure. If you took the eye width from an average human to what I've seen there, it's quite a bit wider. Sure, but the whole head is. So when you look at it ratio-wise, based on proportion, it's proportionate to the body. Comparing it to a 5'10" human, it's considerably wider. But the head is enormous. The head is absolutely enormous, and it looks like it's just sitting on the shoulders. So when you combine that to an incredibly with collarbone, with this massive head sitting there with virtually no neck, and the only reason I knew there was a neck is because part of the neck was shaven. Some of the hair was removed, and it was impressive, very, very impressive.
Oh wow! Okay, well I'm gonna keep going here. Of course, one of the things that you talk about is the heavy brow ridge, and it was all the way across. One of the theories is that heavy brow ridge is that if something was going to be able to run through the forest at night, and you don't want, if you accidentally hit a branch or something, you could deflect it. I mean, the brow ridge has never really been explained. Especially the brow ridge of Homo erectus, and going back, it's just massive. Would you agree this was massive? I mean, you talk about the brow ridge.
The brow ridge was massive, but and two, it had very deep sockets. The eyes were almost set into a very deep, wide socket area, so that made the brow ridge even stand out further. I see what you're saying, getting a branch in your eye or something, where humans you got the eyebrow and the eye pretty much almost at the same level, but with a recessed socket and then the pronounced brow ridge, you would have that protection area, and I'll agree with that, because you definitely could see that in there. And I think it's a combination between the deep socket and the heavy brow ridge, but it definitely kind of gave it a protected area for the eyes, no question.
Yeah, you see that also in Homo erectus and Homo heidelbergensis as well. Now, over time, this is something you probably have, these ancient human type creatures. Back to Homo erectus, there is a ridge that goes from that brow ridge backwards, okay? And it's never been explained. But it's probably 3 to 4 times thicker than a gorilla. I mean, it definitely has a purpose, but it's undefined. Did you notice a ridge from the middle of the brow ridge backwards?
Backwards towards, like, above the ear?
Yeah, no. Like, imagine between the eyes, above the nose, backwards toward, like, the middle of the head. Imagine that it's just...
Okay, upwards, you mean?
Yeah, straight back,
Okay. I really didn't. I'll say that the forehead had a good slope to it, just above the brow ridge. It kind of dropped back fairly quickly. But then the hairline started there, and it was probably 4.5, 5 inches thick above that area. So it was hard to determine the actual cranial dimension and the actual angles and proportions. But it was impressive. One day everybody will be able to see it. I don't know. The description, I had 20 minutes there.
Can you describe the ears?
The ears, I tell you, the ears were very flat to the head. And the reason why I can describe the ears is because the hair was very thin across the ear. As a matter of fact, I didn't even have to move the hair to get a good look at the ear shape, size. Again, proportionate to the size of the head. It was very flat to the skull. It had earlobes that were connected right down to the cheek, or above the cheek, or the jawbone. And one thing, the ear canal was extremely large. And as a matter of fact, that was the very first thing I noticed, other than I seen the powder on his skin when I walked up to it, was the size of the ear canal. enormous. And when I say it was probably close to the size of a quarter in diameter, that's not exaggerating at all. It was big.
A quarter?
I'd say almost the size of a quarter. Matter of fact, that was one of the first things I mentioned when we got back in the car when we left there. I said, Rick, one thing that blew me away was the size of the ear canal, where maybe we had the size of the actual opening on ours was maybe smaller than a dime. This thing was just enormous. How big of an opening into the side of the skull was just enormous. And it was right where our ear canal starts, exactly. Maybe a quarter might be pushing it, but it's pretty close to the size of a quarter.
Well, obviously you've read our book as well, but one of the theories, and this is not our theory at all, but it's about that human development could have been caused by self-domestication. Of course, there's never been a creature that you could say, well, we came from that. Like people can say, well, the cattle came from the auroch, and that, so all cattle came from this 6.5 foot tall, big, thing. And then you can go through, the wolves, whatever, but all of these creatures have considerably bigger auditory and visual centers. They're much larger. And, I mean, you're kind of describing that same thing. You're describing a creature that has this at least 50% larger ear canals, larger eyes, you're describing basically what the theory thinks. Do you think that theory might be correct?
I do, because one of the things when I first looked at the size of the ear canal opening, I said, God, this thing can probably really hear good. With an opening that size, you're letting a lot of sound in there. It was enormous. And the other thing, too, is the width of the mouth was just huge. I know some humans, when you look, some people have wide mouths, This thing had an enormously wide mouth. And, boy, I would have given anything to grab that jaw and open it up and look inside. And I just didn't want to push the bounds of the permission I had. But just huge. It was just a huge mouth on this thing, wide.
The mouth, nose, eyes, ears, all huge.
Big, yes.
Proportionally large. So those sensory areas were proportionately more than 50% that of
being this whole size of the head, but with just the opening of the nostrils, the mouth, and the ear canal, definitely seemed past the normal size of the large head that it was toting around. So I would definitely say yes, those were above and beyond larger than proportionally the size of the head it was toting around, if that makes any sense. I didn't expect them to be that big.
Well, that actually is actually, they would have to be 200, in order for domestication, that almost seals the deal that self-domestication that's very, very interesting. I know most people will think this is a boring part of the interview, but it's still very, very interesting. Can you talk about the head? Is it set forward on the body? I was laying on its back, so it may be hard to tell, but can you just talk about the head in proportion? Is it, like the humans are kind of on top of the body? People talk about that.
Laying on its back, there was no prop, there was no pillow, so I would imagine the back of the head was at the same level of the back of your shoulder blades because it was laying flat. But with such a pronounced chest, it looked like the head was set back because the chest was so predominantly tall. If you know what I mean. I would say that from the side, you're looking probably 16, maybe 18 inches to where the shoulder came from the bottom up, and then, the head sat below that. But there was a lot of hair on the back of the head, though. And matter of fact, some of it looked like it was groomed, like somebody pulled it back. It was almost laid out perfectly from the one side of the shoulder to the other. There was a lot of hair that sat behind the back of the neck.
Did you feel that whoever had been working on the scientists, unknown scientists who were working on this, had treated the animal with care? respect?
Absolutely, yes. There was definitely incisions made. Matter of fact, Merchant Care brings up another interesting point. The areas that were shaved, the neck, around the heart, and the lower belly part, the hair was saved, and it was actually put in plastic bags, not like a Ziploc bag, like a medical bag that you can clearly see through. And it was marked on there, stomach area hair, neck hair, and there was a chest area over, like where your heart would be. So whoever did this didn't just throw all the hair in one bag. I noticed that there was 3 separate bags, and each bag was labeled exactly where the hair was removed from, which I thought that, okay, somebody must know what they're doing, because I would have shaved off all the hair and put it in one bag, and they didn't. They kept it separate in each bag, which I thought, okay, somebody knows what they're doing here.